The Godfather 3 is unfortunately known as the Fredo of the Godfather trilogy. Most of us try to avoid this film when rewatching the saga, because compared to its predecessors, which are two of the greatest films ever made, it is simply nowhere near the brilliance of the first two.
Think I'm smart?
And it's understandable, it has many negative aspects and problems that I'm sure you know about. But one thing that seems to be often overlooked, and not really addressed, is that the storyline itself is brilliant. The execution, however, is a different story. But the problem is that the other issues overshadow the main story and dilute what could have been a brilliant film on par with the prequels. In fact, most people who watch the film are left confused and disgruntled not only because of the glaring issues the film has, but because the storyline seems vague and obscure. Which is unfortunate because it did have the potential to end the saga as brilliantly as it had started. So after multiple requests, we are finally going to break down The Godfather 3. Let's see if by analyzing the story, unraveling the different plots and clarifying different aspects of the film, can change our opinion, and at least appreciate some of the positives it has. So in this video we will break down the core of the entire story, and once we understand this the rest will make a lot more sense. The film has many faults, but after doing a lot of researching and rewatching the films, we can guarantee that in the next few videos covering this film you'll probably have a completely new perspective on the story as a whole. International Immobiliare was a European real estate company. Its properties were worth over $6 billion by the 1970s, making it the largest landowner in the world. The Vatican owned a 25% interest in the company. Michael had slowly become one of the biggest investors and owners of the company, however wanted to be the majority stakeholder, to allow him almost complete control of this billion-dollar conglomerate. So he needed the Vatican's 25%. This is why when he was approached to help Gilday in recovering their $769 million deficit, he utilized this incident to what he saw as the final move that will absolve himself and the family from their criminal past, and finally give him the recognition and image he desperately wanted. This would be Michael's most ambitious and the most dangerous venture he had ever gone after. The risks were extremely high and the repercussions could be even higher, but if he succeeded the rewards would be astronomical. Let's not forget, this is not a simple business deal to him. The amount he will be making would be unheard of within his world. The Corleone family would be one of the wealthiest families not just in America but in the world. It's true generational wealth that will last long after Michael is gone. Don Vito could only have dreamed of his family's wealth to reach such heights. But once again, and as we later find out, Michael was getting involved in something incredibly dangerous that this time he would not be able to recover from. We are reintroduced to a much older Michael Corleone, who it seems has pretty much completely transformed from a mafia boss to corporate CEO. He has pretty much rebranded himself and the family away from its mafia past, to now being heavily involved in philanthropic and charitable projects. Although there is no mention of what exact business he is now involved in, we know that he owned huge investments in the stock markets, real estate and other ventures. But the primary business was always gambling and operating casinos. But at this time we see that the family is at a critical transitional point in its history. Michael was cleaning up the last remnants of what remains of the former criminal empire. But even further, he settled all the family's business in the casinos and gambling.
We've sold the casinos. All businesses having to do with gambling. We have no interest or investment in anything illegitimate.
All for one extremely ambitious project. The Immobiliare deal would not only allow Michael to enter an entirely new stratosphere in both terms of power and wealth, allowing him to attain even more influence and connections with some of the most powerful people on the planet. He primarily wanted two things: generational wealth and redemption. From a business perspective, it's a brilliant move. Real estate is known to be a great investment and profitable business. And adding the status and reputation of such a company with a long history gives the whole venture more weight and appeal to Michael. So for Michael this deal made complete sense. But what Michael really is seeking is redemption.
I ordered the death of my brother. He injured me. Fredo! Fredo!
During his pursuit in attaining all this power and wealth, he had lost a huge part of his soul. He was traumatized by some of the decisions he made, and the excruciating pain of regret that they had caused him. Even though he had convinced himself it was all for the good of the family, he was actually slowly destroying it. And so had wanted to salvage what had remained and make it up to all those he had inadvertently harmed. So when Michael was approached by Archbishop Gilday, he saw this as the perfect opportunity to make a move. However, Michael did not know exactly what he was getting into. This would end up being the most elaborate attempt to destroy Michael and the Corleone family once and for all. And they almost succeeded. As we mentioned, this was an extremely well-planned and complex plot that was unlike anything Michael had ever had to deal with. So to start off with, we'll look at the major players that are involved. These individuals were not on the same level as even the most sophisticated mobsters or crime bosses that Michael had dealt with in the past.
It's not personal. It's only business. You should know, Godfather.
Let's start off with probably the most powerful one of the group, Don Licio Lucchese. Lucchese was the chairman of the board of Immobiliare and a key figure in the Italian underworld. He was known as Don Lucchese due to his significant ties to the Mafia. He also had very deeply entrenched relations with individuals in the highest ranks in the Italian government. Next we have the second mastermind behind this plot, the Vatican banker, Friedrich Koenig. Koenig is the Swiss chief accountant of the Vatican Bank, and so, he represented the Vatican on the board of directors. The final major player involved was Archbishop Gilday. Not much is known about him, however he was an integral player in the scheme. He exploited his position and the name of the Vatican in order to steal millions of dollars for him and his partners. Finally, although not a major player in the overall scheme, he had played a very important part in aiding the efforts of the other three. This was the seemingly old and weak Don Osvaldo Altobello. Altobello was a friend of Don Corleone during Prohibition, in which he became godfather to Connie. He would later on take over what remained of the Tattaglia family, making a rapid rise to prominence. And because of his personal relationship with the Corleone family, he was allowed to join the commission by Michael. For the most part, when Michael was still ruling over the criminal underworld, Don Altobello was a genuine and close ally to Michael. However, that would all change when Michael made it public that he was shifting entirely to the legitimate world. Michael was a genius and had been making a lot of people very rich, especially Altobello, and so when it was all about to end, he aligned himself with even more powerful people, who he thought could benefit him more. So although in his later years he does like to play the role of the bewildered old man and loyal father-like figure, he was in fact a very experienced and skilled Machiavellian schemer, knowing when and how to use people when convenient. This whole scheme is quite elaborate with so many moving parts and individuals involved, so we will break it down in depth in the next video. It is a little more complicated, so this is an overview of what essentially happened, and in the next video, everything will fall in place perfectly.